I grew up near a small family-owned amusement park in Ohio. It wasn't anything fancy, just a handful of rides, a haunted house, and a kiddie section. The park had been around since the 50s, and you could feel the history in the cracked pavement and the faded carousel horses. When I was 17, I got a summer job there, running one of the smaller snack booths near the edge of the park. It was easy money, mostly selling cotton candy and sodas to overheated families. But that summer, something happened that still keeps me up at night. It started with the Mouse Man. The park had its own mascot, a giant cartoonish mouse named Chester. Chester had been the park's icon for decades, his big round ears and goofy smile plastered all over the signs. They had a couple of employees who rotated shifts in the Chester costume, walking around, taking pictures with kids, the usual mascot routine. One evening, about an hour before closing, I was shutting down my stand when I saw him. Chester. He was just standing there, about 30 feet away near the carousel. He wasn't waving. He wasn't interacting with anyone, just standing still, staring in my direction. It was unsettling, but I figured whoever was inside the suit was just messing around. I waved, but he didn't wave back. He only tilted, his head slightly. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away, disappearing behind the carousel. I didn't think much of it until the next night. I was walking to my car after my shift when I saw him again, near the back fence of the park. It was dark, and most of the lights had been shut off for the night, but I could still see the oversized head and those lifeless eyes staring at me from across the lot. This time, I felt a wave of dread. There was no reason for the mascot to be out that late. The park had closed, and all the performers should have been in the break room or gone home. I picked up my pace, walking faster toward my car. But as I reached for my keys, I heard something that made my stomach drop, a voice, low, muffled, coming from inside the suit. "You look lost." I spun around, but he was already gone. I didn't tell anyone about it. Maybe I was just tired, imagining things. But the next night, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. A couple of my coworkers were talking in the break room about Chester, about how the guy in the suit had been acting weird lately. Someone joked that he never seemed to take off the costume, even after hours. Then one of the managers chimed in. "What are you talking about? The Chester suit's been in storage all week. We haven't had anyone wearing it since last Saturday." I felt my breath hitch. I wasn't the only one who saw him. Others had too. But if no one was wearing the costume, then who or what had been standing outside my booth? This happened when I was 14. My parents had taken me and my little sister Mia to an old amusement park in Pennsylvania. It wasn't one of the big, famous ones, just one of those local parks that had been around forever. It had the usual rides, roller coasters, a Ferris wheel, bumper cars, but it also had this weird abandoned section that was fenced off. The employees never talked about it, but you could see glimpses of rusted rides through the gaps in the wooden fence. It creeped me out, but Mia was fascinated. It was a slow afternoon, so the lines were short. Mia and I ran off to ride as many things as we could. After about an hour, she pointed to something near the back of the park. "Let's go on that one." I looked where she was pointing. There was an old ride at the edge of the park, half hidden by trees. It was one of those classic spinning rides, the kind with little swings attached to chains that lift you up as it turns. It was weird, though. The ride looked old, way older than the other ones in the park. The paint was peeling and the swing swayed slightly in the breeze, even though no one was on it. There wasn't a line. There wasn't even a worker operating it. But the gate was open and Mia was already running toward it. I hesitated. Something about the ride felt wrong, but I didn't want to be the cowardly big brother, so I followed her. Mia hopped into one of the swings, giggling as she kicked her feet. I climbed into the one next to her. That's when I noticed something strange. The chains, they were rusty, way rustier than they should have been for a working ride. Some of them even looked frayed, like they were barely holding together. Before I could say anything, the ride started moving. I hadn't heard an engine start. No music, no operator pressing a button. It just started. slowly at first, but picking up speed. Mia laughed, completely oblivious to how wrong this was. But I was gripping the chains, my heart pounding. The ride lifted us higher, spinning faster. The ground blurred beneath us. I could hear a faint creaking sound, metal straining, groaning under pressure. I tried to look at the center of the ride, where the operator should have been, but there was no one there. No booth. No controls. Nothing. That's when I saw them. The swings next to us, ones that had been empty, weren't empty anymore. Figures were sitting in them. Dark, shadowy figures, their heads lolling to the side like broken dolls. Their arms dangled, limply at their sides, but their faces, or what should have been faces, were turned toward us. Mia finally noticed. She screamed. The ride was spinning even faster now, the chains rattling, the rusted metal screeching. I could feel the seat beneath me shaking like it was about to snap off. "Mia, jump!" I shouted. She was crying, clutching the chains, too scared to let go. I reached for her, but as soon as I did, the ride stopped. Not gradually. Not like a normal ride winding down. It just stopped. We both slammed into our seats, breathing hard. The swings rocked back and forth. I looked around. The figures were gone. The chains next to us were empty again, swaying gently in the wind. Without a word, we unbuckled ourselves and ran. When we found our parents, we tried to explain what happened. They looked confused. My dad even went back with me to see the ride. But when we got there, it was gone. Not just shut down, completely gone. No swings, no rusted metal. No sign it had ever been there. Just an empty, overgrown patch of land. To this day, I don't know what we rode. And I don't want to. I used to. Work at an amusement park in Florida, the kind of place that gets packed with tourists all summer. I was just a ride operator, mostly running the smaller attractions, teacups, bumper cars, kiddie rides. One of the attractions was an old-fashioned fun house. It had the usual stuff: mirrors, spinning tunnels, a maze of wobbly floors. Kids loved, but I always found it a little creepy. One night, about 30 minutes before closing, a little boy came up to me while I was standing near the entrance. He looked about 6 or 7, wearing a striped t-shirt and cargo shorts. "I lost my mommy," he said. I knelt down to his level. "Where did you last see her?" He pointed inside the funhouse. It was late and the crowd had died down. I figured his mom had just gotten turned around in the maze and would come looking for him any second. "Do you want to wait here while I check inside?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, I want to go home." That struck me as odd. Most lost kids cry for their parents, cling to you, beg for help. This boy just stared at me with these big blank eyes. I told him to stay put and stepped inside the funhouse. It was empty. The only sound was the faint, distorted carnival music, playing from an old speaker. I walked through the mirror maze, past the spinning tunnel, checking every corner. No sign of his mother. When I stepped back outside, the boy was gone. I looked around, but the park was nearly empty. There was no way he had just vanished in that short amount of time. I went to security, described the kid, and they checked the cameras. That's when things got weird. They found the footage of me talking at the entrance of the fun house. They could see me kneeling, gesturing, having a full conversation. But the boy, he wasn't there. I was talking to no one. They rewound the footage again and again. Every time it was the same. I was just standing there talking to empty air. They told me not to worry about it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I imagined it. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I pass by the fun house at night, I still feel like someone's watching me. And there you have it. 3 disturbing, true horror stories from amusement parks. If you ever find yourself in an old, run-down theme park, pay attention to the rides, the people, and the things that shouldn't be there. Because sometimes, the scariest attractions are the ones you don't remember getting on.